Hi, good afternoon. Today, Peter, we want to start with what is called as optimal taxation. In order to do this chapter of optimal taxation, I would also like you to do some more recordings from the portal. So what you are supposed to go ahead and do is in your, in your portal, you will see this chapter, which is called as cost of taxation. Okay, please do this chapter. That will help you understand what we are going to go ahead and do. There is another chapter called Consumer, Producer, and Government. You have to do that chapter also. These two chapters, they are going to help you understand what is optimal taxation. Jitna bhi part hota hai na, jahan pe we talk about deadweight loss, we talk about demand, supply, वो सबके लिए ये दो chapters, they're going to act as the basic chapters, right? So I want you to go ahead and please do these two chapters also before you start with me. Now, there is something else that I would like to highlight. One second. Okay, so there is something else also that I would like to highlight, and that is related to the kind of questions that are asked. So these are the past year questions which are asked from optimal taxation. Ek bari pehle questions dekh lete hain, then we will start with the topic. The question is, distinguish between ability to pay and benefit principle. This was asked in 2017. Yehi benefit principle, it was also asked in 2011. It was also asked in 2010. So it's a very common topic. Then another type of question that comes is, write short note on optimal taxation. ठीक है, इसी को restructure करके, rename करके they asked in 2011, what are the requirements for good tax structure? एक ही बात है. You have to define how a good tax structure looks. And then they also talked about how far benefit tax principle fits with this criteria. So see that every year they're just going through the same topics. What is optimal taxation? What is a good tax structure? What is the benefit principle? How the benefit principle is attached to the good tax structure? Same kind of questions are asked. Then in 2010, another question that was asked was, what is tax incidence? Analyze how it is determined under the modern theory of tax incidence. So these are few of the questions that are asked from optimal taxation. And today we will start analyzing this topic in a bit detail. इसको हम थोड़ा सा detail में analyze करेंगे. So let us start by understanding what a government does. देखो, whenever I talk about the government needs money, government needs revenue. And to get this revenue, the government can collect this revenue either through taxes और नॉन टैक्सेस. नॉन टैक्स क्या हो गया? जैसे मैंने टोल कलेक्ट कर लिया, दैट्स अ नॉन टैक्स, है ना? जैसे somebody is driving a car and they broke some traffic rule and I collected the fine, that is non tax. So when I talk about government derives its receipts through various sources. It can be taxes, it can be non taxes, it can be grant and aid. मतलब I just went ahead to some other country and I requested that country to give me some grants. Okay? So it can be through grant and aids, and it can be through public debt. Matlab, I issued bonds to the public, I issued security to the public, and in return, I went ahead and I raised money. So all these ways are different ways through which the government can collect its receipt. जो भी पैसा गवर्नमेंट कलेक्ट करती है, वो क्यों कलेक्ट करती है? To finance its expenditure. So whatever receipts the government is collecting, the aim is to go ahead and to finance the expenditure. The aim is to go ahead and do some expenditure. That expenditure can be on multiple things: building the flyover, building schools, repaying the earlier loan. कुछ भी चीज में मेरा खर्चा हो सकता है, But to finance that expenditure, I need receipts, and revenue can come through these sources. Now, please understand that there are two things. When I talk about non-taxes in a way are voluntary, है ना? So अगर tax नहीं है, जैसे fine, जैसे toll, ये voluntary है. If I will go through a flyover, only then I have to pay the toll. So whenever you use Google Map, you will see that Google Map will show you that if you go via route 1, you have to pay the toll. If you go via route 2, there is no toll, right? So which means that you can go ahead and you can decide whether you want to pay the toll or not, depending on which road you take. Similarly, if you drive safe enough, if you drive smoothly, then there is no reason why you have to pay the fine. There is no fine. So non-taxes are voluntary. When I say they are voluntary, माने जरूरी नहीं है. There is no compulsion that you have to pay them. But the taxes that you pay, they are compulsory. Whenever you will eat food, if there is a GST in the cafe, you have to pay that GST now. Whenever you go ahead and let's say you earn an income, there is an income tax, you have to pay the income tax. So taxes are compulsory, right? Now, what is the economic rationale behind levying the taxes? Why are we charging the taxes? The first thing that we are charging the taxes for, that is called as optimal and efficient resource allocation. अब जैसे for example, एक बहुत simple example लेते हैं. जैसे मैं चाहती हूँ that people do not consume excessive cigarettes or excessive tobacco. What can I do? I can simply go ahead and charge a heavy tax on tobacco, charge a heavy tax on alcohol. When I will charge a heavy tax, I am making sure that at the end of the day, only its efficient consumption takes place. People don't consume it excessively. People consume it in less quantity. So one way of ensuring that people consume alcohol, tobacco, etc. in lesser quantity is to inflate its price, is to put a lot of tax on it. Okay, so that's the first thing, bring optimum and efficient resource allocation. The second thing is help accelerate the rate of savings and investment. अब देखो क्या होता है. A lot of times, government tells you that if you go ahead and you have a particular amount of savings, just like government says that if you invest for 3 years, then you don't have to pay tax on this amount, right? So if you go through the income tax part, you will see that, you know, certain amount is exempted from paying tax if it is saved in mutual funds or if it is saved in ATC places. That means that the government is initiating investment, initiating savings. Government बोल रही है कि पैसा बचाओ, जो पैसा आप सही स्कीम में लगाओगे वहां पे आपको टैक्स पे नहीं करना पड़ेगा. So this is another thing which we have to keep in mind, that it helps us to increase the savings and investment. Now let's come to the third point. It reduces inequality in the income. Now, if you go through my video lectures of basic video lectures, beta, there is a video lecture that I have done, and that video lecture, it is on the 10 principles of economics. यहाँ लिख लेते हैं. Refer to 10 principles of economics. In those 10 principles of economics, I have gone ahead and I have talked about efficiency versus equity. थोड़ा सा इसको समझते हैं, ठीक है? See, when you put tax on people, suppose I put tax on people who are earning income. ये लोग हैं जो earn कर रहे हैं income. I put a tax on them. I collect that money and I pay to people who are poor, who are not earning income. So इससे what am I bringing? Equality. I am bringing equality in the economy. But when I go ahead and I bring this equality in the economy, what will these people think? People who are earning income. they will think that, there is no point earning income. I should rather not earn income and take money from the government. So their incentive to work, their productivity will reduce. They don't want to be efficient. They will think there is no reason why we should be earning money. Why not just take the money from the government, right? So whenever you are aiming to bring equality by transferring taxes, there is a disadvantage also, that this will reduce the efficiency in the economy. It will reduce the productivity in the economy. So this is exactly what we are saying, right? It is reducing inequality in the economy, inequality in income, wealth, and consumption, because you are redistributing wealth. You are taking wealth from the rich and you're redistributing it to the poor. Okay, next pair. To check price rise and inflationary tendencies. देखो, जब भी किसी भी चीज का प्राइस इंक्रीज हो रहा होता है, जब भी किसी भी चीज में इन्फ्लेशन आ रही होती है या डिफ्लेशन आ रही होती है, in macroeconomics we have studied that taxes are called stabilizers. Taxes are called stabilizers. So थोड़ा सा एक बारी macroeconomics में वापस जाते हैं. But my IAS equation that I used to write, it is y is equal to c plus I plus g plus mx, है ना? और ये c को how do we write this? c bar plus c yd plus I plus g plus mx, right? And yd को I can write it as y minus tax, है ना? So ये ty भी हो सकते हैं, proportionate tax भी हो सकते हैं. अच्छा, when you start solving this, then beta you will get the optimal value of y as alpha g into a, where this alpha g is multiplier and a is all autonomous factors, right? But this alpha g that we write down, this is nothing but 1 upon 1. This is my alpha g. This is how we write this down. And so just think about this. Whenever we talk about the multiplier has a tax component attached to it. The multiplier has a tax component attached to it. Whenever this tax changes, the amount of output in the economy will change, right? The amount of output in the economy will change. Now, whenever you increase or decrease taxes, how the output changes? Because my IAS curve will shift. So this is IAS, this is LM. My IAS curve may shift rightwards or leftwards. And जब leftward shift होता है तो output decrease हो जाता है. जब rightward shift होता है तो output increase हो जाता है. Now this, if you remember, this is all macroeconomics. It's there on your portal. So if you remember, beta, this IAS curve, this is used to derive the AD curve. So finally, I have my AD curve and AS curve drawn in the PY domain. Whenever the IAS curve will shift, the AD curve will also shift. So if the IAS curve shifts to the right, whenever there is movements along the IAS curves, my AD curve will also shift. And when my AD curve will shift, my price will increase. Similarly, my AD curve, whenever it will shift backward, my price will decrease. So what I intend to say here is that through movements in the taxation, through movements in this tax rate, I can go ahead and I can ensure that I fluctuate my IAS and LM curves. And when I go ahead and I fluctuate my IAS and LM curves, I can go ahead and fluctuate my AD curve and thereby the prices. That is why taxes are called as the stabilizers. जब price ज़्यादा बढ़ रहे होते हैं, we can stabilize. Price ज़्यादा घट रहे होते हैं, we can stabilize. So taxes are the right stabilizers for my economy. I hope this is clear to you, right? Okay. So here, this should be TNC. Now you have to just take this here, beta. This will be y minus c 1 minus ty. तो ये होगा. Okay, so this is my multiplier. Okay, nevertheless, this is all macroeconomics. But wahan se I just want to raise this point that whenever there is price rise or price decrease, whenever there is inflation or deflation, then you can just write that taxes act as stabilizers. ये point important है that they are called the stabilizer of the economy. They can check whether the IAS will move right or left because वो एक multiplier के part में आ रहे हैं. They are coming as part of the multiplier. And multiplier effect ही तो है पूरा. That is what decides how the IAS curve will move, right? Okay, now come forward. The next point is to promote employment opportunity, which is the case of stabilization. Again, but when I will go ahead and change the value of T. यहाँ पे वापस थोड़ा सा मैक्रो में देखो, जब मैं ये T की वैल्यू चेंज करती हूँ तो मेरा IS और LM का IS का राइटवर्ड या लेफ्टवर्ड शिफ्ट होता है. Now when my IS curve is shifting to the right, what is happening? My output level is increasing. When my output increases, that means I want to produce more. When you produce more, employment will increase in the economy, na? And when your output decreases, that means IS is shifting backward. That means output is decreasing, so I need less people. Employment will decrease. And when employment will decrease, I will go ahead and I will create a series of things in the economy. So the point here is that taxes are also creating or destroying the employment opportunity. Taxes employment को भी affect कर रहे हैं. So these are the different reasons why taxes are used. एक बारी दोबारा जल्दी से quickly देख लेते हैं. Why do we want to charge taxes? For optimal and efficient resource allocation, to accelerate the rate of savings and investment, to reduce inequality in the economy, to make sure that we can check on the prices and check on the employment. ये 5 points हमने लिख लिए. Now, but whenever you study any topic, you must go ahead and you must read through the different authors. In public economics, one of the very, very famous book author is Musgrave and Musgrave. That's the beautiful book that public economics uses. And you must go through that book. So what are we saying? Musgrave and Musgrave have given the following criteria to tell the quality of the tax structure. So Musgrave and Musgrave ने 1989 में ये following tax structure को define करने के लिए चीजें बताई हैं, जिसमें उन्होंने सबसे पहले बताया है that a tax should be a fair tax. What do I mean by a fair tax? A fair tax is any tax which is charged according to your ability to pay, right? So the burden should be equitable. मतलब क्या है? एक person है who's earning 10 rupees and another person he is earning 2000 rupees. I should not be charging both of them 200 as tax. That will be wrong. So I have to make sure that the tax is equitable. I have to make sure that each of them pays according to their fair share. If they are earning different levels of income, they should be paying different amount of tax. Ab dekho, suppose both these people, they go to McDonald's to eat a burger. And let's say this burger costs 5 rupees. Then both should pay, suppose I tell you that tax on the burger is 2 rupees. तो अब क्या ठीक है दोनों से 2 rupees ही charge करना. One was earning 10 and one was earning 2000. Yes. Each of them is consuming the same commodity now. They're just going ahead and eating the same burger. So why should they pay different tax? They will pay the same tax. So this equitable, this fair, it depends on what you are doing. If it is an income tax, then fair will mean charge according to income. More income, more tax, less income, less tax. But if it is a commodity tax, then if both of them consume the same commodity, they should be charged the same amount. This is exactly what we are saying in this case. यही हम यहाँ पे बोल रहे हैं. Okay, beta, come to the next point. The next point says that tax should be chosen so as to minimize interference with economic decision in the efficient market. ये बहुत important point है. इसको थोड़ा सा elaborate करने के लिए I want to raise the point that, और ये again, बेटा we have done this in that chapter, cost of taxation, वो देख लेना एक बार, it is on the portal. Commodity taxes are distortionary. ये statement पे एक बारी हम highlight करते हैं. Commodity taxes are distortionary. What does it mean that they are distortionary? See, whenever you charge tax on a commodity, it goes ahead and it changes the way a consumer thinks. Let me give you an example. Go back to microeconomics. Let's say this is my budget line. This is good X. This is good Y. How do we draw a budget line? Yahan pe we will have M by PX and here we have M by PY. Here, suppose my initial equilibrium, that is here at point E. Now, suppose I tell you good X is taxed. So price of good X increases to PX plus T. Good X को हमने tax कर दिया. So my budget line will pivot inwards क्योंकि सिर्फ good X का price change हो रहा है. Here I will have M by PX plus T. And when this happens, we have studied Slutsky equation. We know that total effect is substitution effect plus income effect. And when price increases, then if it is a normal good, the demand should decrease. So let's say my new equilibrium, but it is here. Suppose at point E dash. So what happened? I reduced the consumption of good X. Na? Suppose I tell you that good X is pizza. I love pizzas. And I tell you good Y is book. I like books, but not too much. Okay. Because good X was taxed, my decision making changed. Even though I love pizzas more than I love books, but now because good X is taxed, the way I think has been changed. I have reduced the consumption of good X. This is called distortion. Distortion मतलब जिस तरीके से हम सोचते हैं एक commodity के लिए, जब उस पर टैक्स लग जाता है तो हमारा thought process changed. Take another example. But suppose we talk about cars. Now suppose I tell you that you love sedan over hatchback. I don't like hatchback cars. I just love sedan cars. But now I have put a tax on sedan cars because of which because this has been taxed, I am going and buying hatchback. मुझे ये ज़्यादा पसंद नहीं थी, मुझे ये ज़्यादा पसंद थी. But इस पे tax लग गया because of which I moved to these cars. That is an optimal example of distortion. That I have distorted my preferences. I am not going for the best preference. So, एक अच्छा tax कौन सा होता है? It says the best tax is one which minimizes the interference, which does not change the behavior of the consumer, right? Which does not go ahead and causes this distortion. And if it causes distortion, the distortion is minimum. ज़्यादा लोगों के thought process में difference नहीं आना चाहिए because of tax. That is what this is saying. Now, one more thing. Every tax, commodity tax, it is related to something which we call as the deadweight loss. Deadweight loss, it's also known as the excess burden. So, what is a good tax? A good tax is one which minimizes this excess burden. Again, beta, this deadweight loss is well explained in this chapter that I have given you, cost of taxation. So please revise that chapter. But what I want to say here is that a good tax is one which reduces the deadweight loss, which has minimum deadweight loss associated with it. Now come to the third point. A good tax is one which minimizes the inequality in the economy. So we want to make sure that the inequality is reduced in the economy. And a good tax is one which also leads to stabilization in the economy. So if you remember, abhi maine aapko pura samjhaya that taxes are stabilizers of the economy through fiscal policy. Fiscal policy kyun beta? Because we bring the role of taxes only in the IAS curve. Hai na? We only write taxes when we have y is equal to c plus I plus g plus nx. Yahan pe taxes aate hain. And this side, this is just my, whenever I change the government expenditure or taxes, that these are fiscal policies. Monetary policy always acts through the LM curve, and fiscal policy acts through G or T. So I am saying a good tax structure is one which uses the fiscal policies, which uses this changes in G and T in order to ensure that there is stabilization and growth objectives being met. A tax system should permit fair and non-arbitrary administration and should be understandable to the taxpayer. ये बहुत important है, समझो. See, whenever I bring in any tax system, उस tax system से related उसकी बहुत सारा administration होती है. We have already done what is GST. In GST, we studied there is something called as GSTN, Goods and Service Tax Network. What was that GSTN doing? It was ensuring that there is one online portal where everybody comes and bills their tax. मतलब एक जगह तो हमें चाहिए ना जहां पे हम एडमिनिस्टर कर पाए कि क्या लोग टैक्स पे कर रहे हैं या नहीं कर रहे हैं. अगर वो टैक्स पे कर रहे हैं तो कितना टैक्स पे कर रहे हैं. तो ये सारी चीज को हमें एडमिनिस्टर करना होता है. हमें लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल इंडिया में वी हैव इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट. वी आर एम्प्लॉइंग मल्टीपल पीपल देयर. So in order to ensure that people pay the right tax, we need so many people around. Now, we want to make sure that whenever we employ all these people, we incur minimum cost on them. उन पे कम से कम खर्चा हो पाए टैक्स कलेक्ट करने में. एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन सर्विस जो है, जिस टैक्स को एडमिनिस्टर करने की जो कॉस्ट आ रही है वो मिनिमम हो. एट द सेम टाइम we have to ensure कि हम जो भी टैक्स लोगों पे चार्ज कर रहे हैं, it should be understandable by the people. So for example, if I introduce some tax lots that 0% tax and then 10% and then 15% and उनको मैं किसी इनकम से लिंक कर रही हूँ, when I'm making that tax slot table, it should be well understood by the people. So I want to make sure that it is fair. And I want to make sure that it is simple and it is well understood by the people. Come to the next point. Administration and compliance cost should be as low as possible. I've already explained you कि इससे related जो cost हो वो कम से कम इन करो. Okay. Now, these are some of the pointers given by Musgrave and Musgrave on the quality of tax structure. Now, beta, let's go forward. And now I want to go ahead and I talk about the theory of commodity taxation. एक बारी समझ लेते हैं. So just think that the taxes can be divided in two parts. One we know is called the direct tax, and other I know is called the indirect tax. Direct हो गया income tax, and under indirect you have the commodity tax. And so the aim is to understand that the commodity tax related analysis. Let's start. Now, whenever you talk about commodity taxation, there is a conventional wisdom. Conventional wisdom मतलब जो हमेशा से चीज को follow किया जा रहा है. And what is that conventional wisdom? It says that you must charge uniform rates. Uniform rate मतलब I should not defer the commodity tax based on different people. ऐसा ना हो that Ambanis have a higher they have a higher capacity to pay tax, तो उनसे same product पे आपने ज्यादा tax लिया, same car पे, and I have a lower capacity to pay tax, तो उसी car पे I am paying lower tax. That will never happen. As long as commodity tax is concerned, you will always see uniform rate. You will always see the same rate, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing that you have to understand is that if you don't follow this, if you don't follow uniform tax rate, then differentiated structure will lead to more distortion. अगर आप हर इंसान से अलग टैक्स रेट चार्ज करोगे तो उससे इकोनॉमी में ज्यादा डिस्टॉर्शंस आएंगी, मतलब एफिशिएंसी विल बी रिड्यूस्ड. So we want to make sure that we charge uniform rate on commodities. There is another theory which we must consider. It says the following. It says that whenever you go ahead and charge different tax rate on the same product from different people, it leads to inequality in the economy. जो इंसान ज्यादा पैसा कमा रहा है, अगर आप उसे बोलो कि आप उसी कार पे ज्यादा टैक्स दो, so he will feel unequal, he will feel discriminated. He is also buying Honda, I am also buying Honda. He will say, how does it matter if I earn more, right? As long as two people are buying the same product, they should be paying the same tax. So what this says is that we want to make a uniform tax system so that there is equality between the different consumers, right? Now, but I want to also go ahead and take into consideration deadweight loss. अब इसकी बात करते हैं थोड़ी सी. So consider the following. Let's say I have this as quantity and this as price. But this is my demand curve and this is my supply curve. Now what I'm doing is I am charging commodity tax. एक बात समझने वाली है, you can collect tax from supplier or consumer. This does not affect incidence of tax. Incidence of tax is what? How tax is distributed between two people, between supplier and consumer. Supplier can pay tax to the government or consumer can pay the entire tax to the government, but the distribution of tax between the two, that will not be affected between the fact that who is paying tax to the government. Now, whenever the government is collecting tax from supplier, you will go ahead and you will shift the supply curve. And whenever government is collecting tax from the consumer, you will go ahead and shift the demand curve. So let's assume that it is the supplier who is finally paying the tax to the government. So beta, your supply curve will shift backward. Why? Because when the supplier is paying tax, then the tax is increasing the cost to the supplier. Cost तो बढ़ गई supplier की, क्योंकि उसको tax भी pay करना है. And whenever cost increases, the supply curve shifts backwards. So what will happen here is that the supply curve is going to shift backward and you will move from point E to E dash. Now, this new point, E dash, this is the new equilibrium in the economy. So this is my new equilibrium price in the economy, right? A tax, beta, it creates wedge. Wedge को बोलते हैं gap between what consumer pays and what producer receives. So whatever is the price in the equilibrium, जो भी demand और supply को meet करके prices मिलते हैं, that is what is paid by consumer. To producer. So whatever is the intersection, wherever you find equilibrium, that price is paid by consumer to the producer. So the consumer is paying P rupees to the producer. Now, after the producer receives this P rupees, out of P, he has to pay tax to the government. So he pays this. How much is the tax? The gap between the two supply curves. So he pays this tax to the government. And after paying tax, the net money left with the supplier is P minus T, right? So after he pays tax, P minus T is what he is left up with. Now, before tax, but the equilibrium in the economy was E. So before tax, the equilibrium price in the economy can be written as P dash, and equilibrium quantity can be written as Q dash. Now, after tax, the equilibrium quantity in the economy becomes Q double dash. So the equilibrium quantity reduced. Jitna log ab demand kar rahe hai, wo kam ho gaya. That means tax has caused distortion in the economy. Tax has gone ahead and reduced the demand in the economy, right? Now, what I want to do in this is calculate consumer producer surplus. So consumer surplus, producer surplus, tax revenue, and finally the deadweight loss. Now look at the consumer surplus.